So one of the things that I think was interesting about the interview that we'll see starting, I think we'd have to give it a week to 10 days to see how this is. I think there's a very different Trump coming into this office for two reasons. Number one, he is a guy that's well aware of image and legacy. I think one thing when you're running for the first term, you've got to go back to your base to get reelected, and you got to keep the MAGA base. He feels very confident in the support, rightly so, by the way, of the support he has from the MAGA base. I think he wants to try to create a bigger and broader legacy on some big money.
Totally agree.
Okay, number two, and this is, I think, one of the most understated issues. Oh, gosh, did I use that wrong again, Mark?
Oh, no, you nailed it, dude.
Thanks. Getting shot and almost getting shot, 2 assassination attempts, I honestly can't believe doesn't have an effect on your thinking, on how much you value life, on you think about your legacy. And I don't think it gets reported enough. But from what I know of Trump and what I've talked to him about briefly, there's no way that this life-altering event has not had a dramatic change in his thinking about what's important, how to get things done, how to interact with people. Maybe I'm off on this. We'll know in a month. I think when we really see pen hit the paper as far as some of these executive orders and how he does it. I also think the other takeaway that was fascinating is this. When he was talking about immigration, and this is going to be the key to this whole thing, he said, when we separate the woman from the criminal and you guys start focusing on her, even though we're getting rid of a criminal and talking about how she's now not going to, right? He is so acutely aware of the imagery that is going to accompany so many of these policies. And that's critical because in the first term, I think he assumed a lot of things about how there would be a media reaction. He is now so much more acutely aware of this that I think this is going to have a profound effect on how he rolls out policy. He's so much better.
Totally agree. And I think it also applies to the inauguration address and what the tone of that is.
You heard him. And he didn't, because again, I don't think he fully appreciated when he talked about American carnage, that would be the line that the media. He said unity yesterday. I think that's going to, we'll see. Again, remember, I think Stephen Miller's going to have a huge piece of the pen on this. But
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, so two things stuck out for me about the interview, and I, Sean, you're probably going to disagree with this. I thought Trump, for the first time, sounded old. I thought his voice seemed a little weak, like he was quiet. It was like wispy. And at times his speech was slightly slower than I recall. Like he's usually so full of piss and vinegar that it was almost jarring to see him so kind of, anyway, I just thought he looked old. And of course, it reminds me, he will be the oldest inaugurated president ever here on January 20th. The second thing that I think is just we have to keep in mind, and particularly when we're talking about bipartisanship, he alternated between reform and revenge. And I think on reform, so on immigration, moving criminals out, I think he'll get a lot of Democrats supporting him on that. But if on January 20th, he pardons all the Capitol rioters, right? 148 police officers were injured. Nobody who was there believes that was a peaceful protest. If Pam Biondi and Kash Patel, I guess they're not being instructed to open investigations, but were to launch what Democrats would perceive to be highly partisan investigations and targeting of journalists and political opponents, that is revenge. And I think they would not be as inclined to work with him on reform, and the trench lines will immediately be reestablished. I think, though, that if that stuff doesn't happen, hopefully at all, but for a while, and they are able to try to, like on Doge and some other things, I think Democrats will cautiously enter the pool with him. But this is where he ping-pongs between reform and revenge, and it'll set the tone for this second term. I also think he'll burn Capitol down fast if he launches revenge, digs in on revenge, and because that important middle of the electorate did not vote for him because they want revenge. They want him to make their lives better. So we'll see.
I think one thing that I thought was fascinating, you used the word reform and revenge. I picked up on
Credit
that.
to Mark Halpern, by the way. Just I want to full
All right.
credit. You wrote that, Mark.
The thing that I thought was interesting is that he would say, "Here's what I think," right? So, you know, he thinks that the January 6th committee, Liz Cheney, et cetera, should be in jail. But then he said, "But I'm not going to go after him." It was this balance, which I actually appreciated. I thought it was like, look, here's how I feel because of what's happened to me. But I mean, like, there's a lot of people. I'd like to see a lot of people in jail. I'd like to, but
Yeah, but then he would always
you're
be
not
like,
president.
they know what they need to do.
Right,
Like, they're
right,
gonna
right.
have
I'm
their
just
own
saying.
views.
I'm just saying that it was the tone. It
Yeah.
was how he handled it. I thought was the correct way, which is here's how I personally feel. Here's what the law allows. Right. I also, to your point about the tone, I mean, I can see why you think he looked old. I thought he looked measured. He went into that thinking exact, and this is what Mark was saying on Friday, which was, okay, I know I'm going into the lion's den, right? Here's what it, but I want to, this was to me, what it wasn't just, it was the prep, watch him walk around the boardroom with her. This was intentional. And it wasn't, he wanted that tone. He didn't
Exactly. And then I think that's what you're seeing a lot of. It's also, he is old, but, and since neither of you are giving me sufficient credit for what I said Friday, this was to me so predictable. We've seen this before. We've seen it when he was running the first time and he gave like a foreign policy address and he wanted people to take him seriously. It's jarring because it's so different. It's not MAGA rally Trump.
I got
It's
so
him
many
on-
texts from people that said that I love. I mean,
Yeah,
people
yes,
were like,
that
"Sean,
yes.
tell the president that was." I mean, like,
But
Yes,
even some of
100%,
those words were slow. Like I hear you,
But
and I
it's
think
because,
that's great.
but it's because he's picking his way through it
Right.
because it's not his normal political mode. But it's all, he is also old. But
I was
a
gonna
lot of
say
a lot of what you're hearing is him. It was clear that was the strategy. That's why they took the interview. Go on a network where you think you're going to get predictable questions and give that version of Trump to condition the field to say, well, if you want to work with him, it's on offer. He's open to it.